Good morning, everyone. This is Sam Allred, and I bring you greetings from Heber City, Utah, my hometown, and beautiful day here. Thanks so much for joining me for this introductory webinar. It's on something we're calling Leading Positive Change. It is presented in partnership with CPAmerica, and we're thrilled to be able to do one exclusively for that association and you, the members of that. I truly believe you're going to find that the time that we spend together to be helpful and enlightening. This is not just a marketing promotion on the program. I'm really trying to teach something with these slides about why change is working or what's not working and what we really need to do different about it. I am recording the presentation, as I always do with these kinds of webinars. I'm going to leave some time at the end and for questions, and encourage you to just chat them in. We will probably go 35 or 40 minutes together total. So encourage you to chat questions in if you've got them, and I'll take any of those at the end. Let me kind of give an overview or a little background to this. At Upstream Academy, we've been blessed to do a lot of enjoyable and exciting things with the accounting profession. I love what we get to do. I was on a flight last night. Don't love the flights, don't love late night flights. I was on a flight last night and shared with somebody I have the best job on the planet, and believe that, other than those late night flights. I love what I get to do, as does our team, and we get to work and have the privilege of working with well over 400 firms across North America. And we see in most all of them a real desire to change, to improve, to get better, and some firms make better progress than others, but the sincere desire is there. And I have known and associated with hundreds of leaders in our profession, and some, by their nature, are more impactful than others. Over the past 3+ decades, 33 years now, just celebrated my 33rd anniversary, if you will, of serving in our profession. Over that 3 decades, I've learned an important lesson about leadership, and it's this: the most reliable indicator of effective leadership is the ability to create positive results. And here's why that's so important. Change in any firm, at any level, with any initiative, is really difficult. You just ask anyone who's tried. And I always find the data, the research, the findings really sobering. Studies show that 70% of all change efforts fail. I mean, for most leaders, that's not an impressive track record. Think about it. Almost every initiative begins with this great anticipation, but somewhere along the way, somewhere along the journey, excitement turns to frustration and the desired change seldom occurs. In most firms, this is repeated over and over and over again, where we get excited about whatever the change initiative is, and we undertake it with great anticipation and excitement, and somewhere all of that turns to frustration and we don't see the results we want to see. And I would ask you to consider this. Consider the impact that such a failure rate, again 70%, has on every member of the firm and on firm culture, where time and again we fall short of what we're wanting to do when we want to change something and the results we want to get. And then here's what's amazing to understand about that. In many cases, and maybe even most cases, the strategy behind the change is sound, and the vision for it is the best thing for the firm and its people. In other words, you're often focused on the right things for the right reason at the right time. So why then is there so much failure? Why do 70% of change initiatives fail if the strategy is sound and even the vision is sound and the timing is sound? Please listen carefully to this, because this is really the core of what I want to share in these slides. The majority of the failures when we undertake change initiatives are due to employee resistance to the change and our leadership behavior that doesn't support the change or isn't committed to the change. In other words, most change failures, more than 70% of them, are not process failures. It's not a result of following the wrong steps. They're the right steps. They're people failures. That's the root cause of most change initiative failures. It falls into buckets. I give you 4 of the most common ones, but there's quite a lot of them. But these are the buckets that they fall into. Individuals across the firm at all levels who are securely anchored in the status quo. They're vested in keeping things the same. The leaders, partners, and others who give grudging compliance, not spirited commitment to the change initiatives. You can, I always say these words, but I believe it, you can spot grudging compliance but 100 yards away. And so in a sense, their negative obedience, willing to do it but in a negative manner, is always one of the weakest forms of leadership. And it doesn't carry the day when we're trying to move change forward and see different results. A firm culture that keeps individuals from voicing their concerns and engaging in open, honest dialogue. Way too much artificial harmony. Way too many issues where we're not encouraging people to honestly share, what are you concerned about? What are you frightened about? What reluctance do you have, and why do you have that reluctance over this? We're not even letting them share or getting them to share honestly what they're dealing with. We're just trying to say this is the right thing to do and the right reason, let's just go do it. A culture that fosters genuine fear of failure and doesn't acknowledge that mistakes, these are the words we always use, mistakes are the tuition we pay to gain invaluable experience. Whenever you have artificial harmony, you have a genuine fear of failure. Those two are always connected. And so I want to dig into this a little bit because I'm really trying to teach why this is such a major issue and why so many things we start don't end the way we want them to end. We have studied 50 common change initiatives, 50 major, and we call them case studies now because they're actually in the binder for what I'm going to talk about in just a minute, but 50 common change initiatives within our profession, things that leaders want to change, know they need to change, know the firm would be better if they did them, and they've had a high rate of failure. And again, as I said, in most cases, the strategy behind the change is sound, and the firm and its people would benefit from making the change. So I want to focus on an example to better understand what's happening here. Let's look at an example that's common to our profession and analyze why has it failed if it makes such sense. So almost every firm, and I'm using just one as the example, 1 out of 50, and by the way, 50 is not the limit, 50 is just what we took and studied. There's way more than that, but we took 50 common things that firms want to change. I just grabbed one of those. It really doesn't matter which one, but I needed one as an example. Almost every firm in North America has tried to implement a plan to remove their worst clients from the firm. Leaders, the clients that we commonly refer to as B-level clients. Leaders of firms admit that the goal of trying to remove these D-level clients has been, for the most part, an almost complete failure. So why? Well, follow along with me here because I want to explain this. So the change initiative, first of all, makes complete business sense for a host of reasons, including the 4 I've listed here on slide 12. There are a host of reasons why this is such a sensical thing to do and a healthy thing to do and the right thing to do for a firm. And here's just 4 of them. Those clients, the D-level clients, put a pit in the stomach of everybody has to deal with them. Almost everybody dislikes the experience, and that's going to affect engagement and turnover and lots of other things. The clients undervalue our services, and so they treat every invoice that we send them like it's an invitation to debate, and that causes reluctance to record all of our time and bill all of our time that we spend on their behalf, and then we get really frustrated. Team members get really frustrated by that. I mean, that's on top of the pain of having the pit in the stomach, by the way. Those clients, these D-level clients, live in what Stephen R. Covey calls quadrant 1. I love his revelation of these quadrants. Quadrant 1 is things that are urgent and important, and we got to just do them. They get in our face, they demand our energy, and they devour our energy and wear us out. And when we serve clients that are in quadrant 1, and let me parenthetically say, the only way out of quadrant one, I'm doing a presentation for the whole profession on this next month, how do you get out of quadrant one? The only way out of quadrant one is to spend time in quadrant two, and it takes great discipline to spend time in quadrant two. Quadrant two is what Covey called the quadrant of quality, and it's where you do things that don't demand your time, but they're really important. So they're important but not urgent. Planning, preparations, values clarification, processes, empowerment, all those different things that you do there. And it takes great discipline to spend time there because they aren't urgent. And D-level clients are the most undisciplined clients on the planet. So those who serve them get sucked into the same quadrant that they're in. So it just wears us out and devours our energy, and we're always behind the 8 ball, and it frustrates people. And then the fourth one I just put in, the fourth one's not a final one because there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense to get rid of these clients, but I put they're demanding and often high risk. They're always cutting corners. They're willing to throw other people under the bus, play the blame game. And again, for a host of reasons, it makes sense to remove these clients from your firm. So if it makes good business sense to remove D-level clients, and it would be in the firm's best interest to do so, then why have most change efforts in this area failed? I said 70% of all change efforts fail. Can I say it's been, for whatever weird reason, it's much higher than that in this particular change effort across our profession. There's not quite 30% of the firms that have done this have been successful. That's a smaller number. And I know so many firms that have tried this. Now, they had some degree of success. We fired one. Some cases, they fired us, but we're going to call it us firing them. We called for the bus stop. Not quite true, but it makes us feel better. But why is there so much failure when it makes such sense? And here's the key, and so important to understand this. Too often, firms focus almost all their efforts on the steps, the process. What are we going to do? Step 1, step 2, step 3 to bring about the change in this step, and they spend way too little effort on the people side of the issue. And this, I'm using just one example, but I got to tell you, when you take 50 examples and break them down, which we do a lot of that in this workshop, you'll see, holy smokes, we're missing the whole people side of this. We're just saying, hey, here's logical steps. Go implement these logical steps. So think about the steps that most firms have taken to try to get rid of their worst clients. And this is going to be a stone's throw, within a stone's throw of what firms have done. Management thinks about it, talks about it, believes in the initiative. It makes perfect sense to them. There's never an initiative without strong belief. Then management works to convince the partners to buy into this change initiative. Let's get rid of our D-level clients. There's often great effort to help partners see the wisdom behind this initiative, why we would be better, why it doesn't make sense to keep them. We're really not making money. There's lots of costs we pay, and let's get rid of them. Then the criteria is developed, whether just for D-level clients or A through D-level clients. The criteria is developed, and then it's applied to all the clients, and we get the list of those who are the stinky ones, and then that's allocated out to partners, and partners are expected to fire D-level clients. And usually given a reasonable period of time to get them off the firm's island. It's not like by Friday at 3. I don't think I've ever seen that. And then number 6, that's not really a step, it's a result. There's few bus stops for bad clients. I mean, you might add a few extra steps for certain firms, but the point I want to make is that for the most part, the steps are logical. It's not that we're missing steps. Now, there's certain things I've watched firms do within their steps that maybe add a little element of success that others might not have, lacking that steps, but the steps are largely logical. So here's the takeaway. If you look only at the process you're going to follow, the steps you take, and the communication you need, got to keep everybody informed of what we're doing, you may fail to help your partners and everyone else see the why, what, and how of the change. Firms often fail to enlist and ensure their help and don't provide the training needed to help people make the change. In other words, because it's logical to us as leaders, we ought to be able to say to people, this just makes sense. Hey, these clients are putting a pit in your stomach. Let's get rid of them. Here's the steps we're going to follow. And everybody ought to fall in line and buy into it. But we've got to look back and say, why are we not having success with these things? And using just this one example, have we really enlisted them? Have we really ensured that we're getting their help and that they're buying in, not just because we think it's logical? And have we provided any training they need? In this particular case, man, there is some training they need. Hey, how much training have partners had on how to fire a client? Most of them would tell you that had zero. So if they're being truthful, it scares them. It's awkward. It's risky that we're going to go fire them. What's going to happen as a result of that? That's way more than just a general crucial conversation to go fire a client. Then what about the training needed to go bring in more business once you get rid of them? Or what's going to happen if my compensation go down, especially if I perceive that we're paid based upon our chargeable hours or managed business or whatever it is. So more emphasis needs to be spent here, because that's generally been one of the great killers of change, is the people side of it. So here's the message, the key principle to understand: when focusing on successful change initiatives, which is what we want to have, place equal emphasis on process, the steps to follow to move the dial or needle, and behavior, how people behave in pursuit of results. Both are vitally important, and one has been largely overlooked because we focused more on the right steps and not on the behavior side of it. Now, if the previous slides strike any kind of a familiar chord with you and seem all too familiar with your firm, or if, as Yogi Berra used to say, it feels like deja vu all over again, then I just want to share that we feel like we can help improve the success of your change initiative. And that's the exact reason why we have developed, specifically for CPAmerica members, the Leading Positive Change workshop. And what I want to do is just kind of walk you through what that is. I'll tell you right from the get-go, the primary focus of that Upstream program is help you get better at leading positive change. How to significantly improve the results of all your change initiatives in the firm at all levels. So here's kind of, I want to give a concise overview of what this program is. First of all, it's a 3-day, maybe more accurately, it's a 2.5 day. It ends at noon on the 3rd day, so that's a travel home day. It's a 3-day workshop that will be held on December 4th through the 8th. That's not right, because that's more than 3 days. So, Jenny, if you'll look at that and tell me the exact days of that workshop. It's only 3 days, not more than that. It will be in a location, and I'm working with Alan. The desire for that is that the location would be central, and the desire on both of our parts is it would be a members conference center, training center, or whatever, a member firms, but it will be a centrally located location for that workshop. And then there will be a follow-up workshop followed in the spring of 2018, and that would give firms a chance and leaders a chance to go back and implement what they heard. Thank you. December 5th through the 7th. I'm not sure why we've got 4th through the 8th, but it's December 5th through the 7th. Thank you, Jenny. And then there's a follow-up session the following spring. And that follow-up session is a chance to report back what you've done, what's worked, what hasn't, get additional instructions and thoughts and ideas, because there's a serious effort to get really, really good at the change initiatives that you implement within your firm. We are limiting that because of how we're going to teach it, the nature of how we're going to teach it, to 50 participants max. So it may be less than that, it will not be more than that are currently serving or being trained to serve in significant leadership roles. So the class size will be 50 or less. And we're looking, this is who we anticipate will attend the workshop: managing partners or CEOs of firms, EC members, board members, those who are in management teams, those who are heads up of offices, our service lines, our segments or industry groups or niches or whatever. Basically, those in the firm who have the responsibility to lead others and to lead change. That's who we anticipate will attend the workshop in December. Here's kind of the 6 key elements of this workshop. I want to take a minute or two and go through each of these. The instructors for the workshop will be Gordon Crater and myself. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to meet or interact with Gordon, but he is one of my favorite people in the entire profession. I see him as one of the best leaders of firms. He has led Plant Moran very successfully and actually steps down at the end of next month, June 30th, as managing partner of Plant Moran. Gordon and I have known each other for 2 decades. I can't think more highly of him than I do. He's a skilled leader and facilitator. He's really articulate in how he shares ideas. He's very visionary, and he has done an incredible job in helping develop a culture of change within his firm so that people are more likely to embrace it rather than fight it. Knowing that the people side of it is what kills more than 70% of the failures for change initiatives. It's so vital to develop a culture of change, and that's one of the reasons why Gordon has been selected to help me teach this, and both of us are very excited to spend a ton of time on this. We plan to take a holistic approach to change. We're going to teach a process that really takes a lot of the guesswork out of the change management steps, a process that leans heavily on the people side of the change process. And we're going to go through that and teach that and put people to work in exercises. And the best thing I can do to kind of show that and teach that is just give you the agenda. And give me a second, I'll just walk through it and give you a feel for what's going to be in the agenda for those 3 days. The first thing I'd point out is notice in blue on the left-hand side, seatings. There's seating assignments. That will be by us, that we seat you in teams around tables, and we change that up. That you'll be on 3 different teams throughout the workshop. That's by design. There's some real benefits. I may come back to that and talk about those benefits. Day 1, after the welcome and introductions, we'll discuss the 10 key principles of effective change. I'm going to park that for a minute and come back to that in just a second with a slide, because I want to share those principles with you. We're going to do a very deep dive. I did a really shallow one this morning, just in interest of time, but we'll do a deep dive on the question, why do most change efforts fail? And really look into that and look through a number of examples. Why do change efforts fail? We'll talk about the best way to create a culture for change. And again, that's one of the areas of Gordon's expertise, having done that. And he'll talk about the exact foundation that needs to be laid and what you need to do to really create a culture of change within your firm. Knowing that nothing changes without a catalyst of some type, then we'll take an in-depth look at how to develop and enable change agents across the firm at all levels. How do you get people that are helping drive change rather than fighting change, and who should you be looking for to do that? We'll talk about measuring change, kind of what constitutes a moving needle, and it's relatively easy when the change initiative is objective. Let's improve our AR over 90 days. Let's improve our realization. Let's strive to have organic growth of 9%. That's more measurable. But we're going to talk about how do you identify the moving needle if it's a subjective change initiative, because so many initiatives are subjective in nature. How do you identify the needle to be able to know if it's moving and communicate on that? Then the afternoon, after lunch, on first day, we'll focus on the change process. By teams, each team of 6 or 7 people will identify a case study. Out of 50 possible case studies that will be in your workbook of common things that firms want and need to change, your team will pick one. Doesn't matter to us, your team will pick one. But then once you pick it, you'll walk through the change process, what I had back here, benefit assessment, barrier assessment, which largely is the people side, needle, what's going to identify the needle of this moving and you having progress. Develop an action plan, communication plan, and the discipline implementation. All the way through action plan and communication plan, you'll develop that and present that to everybody else. And all the other participants will act as if they're members of the firm and will give you open, honest feedback. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are their questions? That's a learning process. Knowing, again, that behavior is one of the biggest killers of change initiative. It's so important to listen to how people feel about what they're hearing, not just assuming because this is logical, everybody is going to buy into this. We all know by now that does not happen. And so that's, in a sense, what we'll do all afternoon. And by the way, if you look at day 2, it's what we'll do in the afternoon of day 2, where it says problem solving round 2. That's what we will do. Different team, different problems, different case studies, same process of change, go through it. It's a learning process. We start the morning of day 2 after we get any questions by talking about the danger of passive resistors. They are the most challenging resistance to change comes from passive resistors. How to spot them, what to do to deal with it. We'll talk about surveying large fields, cultivating small ones. That's one of the key principles, but selecting what to change, what to focus on. The proper pace of change. How much change can one firm handle? One of the biggest mistakes, otherwise good leaders make, is taking on too many change initiatives, and they try to move too many dials at one time, and then it gets all watered down and leads to frustration. How much change can one firm handle? We'll talk in depth about that. And then we'll talk about the communication piece of it. It's so vital. How often should you communicate? How do you communicate? What's the best form of communication that allows you to have success with the change initiative? Day 3, in the morning, we talk about gentle pressure, relentlessly applied. That's again, another key principle, as you'll see in just a minute, the discipline needed for success. That's the last step in the change process, discipline execution. Too many firms are honestly guilty of setting uphill goals and having downhill habits, and then they get frustrated, things aren't successful. And so we'll talk about what's needed to really have the discipline to see change through. And this is really a big deal, this next one, the importance of celebrating change. Because celebrating positive change is a tool for cultivating a success mindset. When you notice and celebrate positive change, the team members start to see the firm as being successful rather than trying to be successful. It's cultural. It's important. And many firms do some really good things, but they stink at celebrating them. And so it's so important to understand that. And then Gordon and I will share our thoughts about the top changes firms need to make to thrive in the future. Not just about how to change things, of which we've talked about now for a little over 2 days. What are some really big things coming that you need to change if you want to thrive? And maybe we could even say survive. And so we're going to talk about some of those things. Then we're going to share some words of wisdom, each of us, some specific things that we think it's important to share with you. And then we always end our things as we do with Golden Nuggets by asking you what was important, what did you get? We record that. We'll take notes throughout, as we often do, and participants will get a complete set of notes from the 2.5-day workshop that will be emailed to them. We're pretty good note takers, and we'll do a good job of that. As I mentioned earlier, it's a highly interactive workshop. And you'll definitely see that when you're there. It's really interactive. There'll be, as I said, 3 seating assignments. Teams will be engaged in case studies and exercises throughout the workshop. A lot of peer-to-peer sharing, networking with peers is a real positive thing. And it will not be sit and listen to lecture hours on end. That is not what we're going to do with this. You will learn by being put to work and learn as you work on things and share things and hear others. And that will be the nature of that. Very interactive. I mentioned something about key principles. An important part of effective change is really understanding what are the key principles you need to follow to have effective change, successful change. And let me just describe as I have it here. A principle is a big deal to us. It is a tenet, an anchor, an enduring truth that does not change. Regardless of what happens in the marketplace, these principles do not change, and so they can guide you in making decisions. And good things always happen when correct principles are followed, and bad things always result when they are violated. It's just that simple. And Gordon and I, in all the time we've spent together and what our experiences and whatever, we've learned that there's some key principles that are associated with leading positive change, and we have 10 of them that throughout the workshop we will be talking about them, coming back to them. They will be ingrained in your minds by the time we're done. I'll just read the headings of these. Surveying large fields, cultivating small ones. How do you select what to choose? How do you choose the right thing? How do you have success early and build on it? Because failure is a lousy foundation to build on. Third one, don't expect immediate buy-in. One of the biggest problems that we see so often in change is we get frustrated with people. We don't realize as management, we talk about it, we look at it, we see the big picture, we get above the trees, we can see the impact, and then we share it, we see hesitancy, and we get all frustrated. And we fail to realize that our partners and others have had their heads down, they're in the trenches, they're doing all the work, and they haven't thought about it and talked about it as much, and they need a little bit of time. And sometimes we want immediate buy-in, or we get frustrated, or we want to push the envelope and go do it. And that, again, knowing that much of the failure, most of the failure comes from the people side of it, we make a mistake. You get to celebrate what you measure. That's actually two thoughts in one, the importance of celebration and the importance of measuring. Create a robust communication plan, how vital that is to make sure that you properly do that, because in the absence of proper information, people make the wrong assumptions of what's going on. Avoid the strategy of hope. You know us well enough to know there's no way we could have a principle without putting the strategy of hope in there, that it doesn't work. Remember, the fish sinks from the head. The key thing there is how important the leaders are in this role. I said that earlier, over 70% of failures are attributable either to the behavior of people or the poor leadership of leaders. And so that's when we come back and talk about how vital it is that if leaders won't lead, you have no chance of having success with your change initiative. Apply gentle, relentless pressure. I referred to that earlier, but that's the discipline to really move the dial. Identify and enlist the influencers. That is really one of the keyest things in trying to develop a culture of change, is the ability to identify and develop influencers throughout the firm, change agents. And then the last one, beware of unintended consequences. You'll notice some of these are positive and some of them are negative. Do these and don't do these, but unintended consequences is such a key thing, because so often we act just knowing that we believe in the initiative. We go forward sometimes without really thinking it through, and we get some unintended consequences that are significant. And so we want to talk about that, and that one will be used throughout the workshop, continually come up as we identify unintended consequences. From day one, almost a little over 15 years ago when we started Upstream Academy, we felt really, really strong that everything that we did should be unconditionally guaranteed to our clients' full satisfaction, to their satisfaction, to your satisfaction. And so we stand behind that. Not hide behind it, stand behind it, proudly. That if you're not completely satisfied, then we will at your option either waive your fee or accept that portion that reflects your level of satisfaction. And every team member understands that, and that's one of the things that we think is fair, and it drives us to do our best. And so we just have always found that to be wise to have that. I put in CPE. I don't know that it's one of the key elements of this, but in case there's questions, I'll just answer them now. There is CPE, and you get CPE for attending the workshop. I don't know how many credits, a minimum of 22 credits for the 2.5 days, but it's possible that we'll go past 5 o'clock the first 2 days, and so it may be more than 22 credits that are available, but there will be CPE. And then the investment for the program. For each participant to attend the workshop is $3,000 for the investment in the workshop. That's the cost for somebody to come and sit through the workshop. I'm going to close the slide, then I'm going to take questions. Again, chat them in if you've got them. I've got some there now, and I'll start taking those. We love, as I mentioned earlier, the best thing in the world that we get to do is help firms and help individuals get better. And honestly, we look back and feel like we've got an outstanding track record of doing exactly that, and are confident that the Leading Positive Change workshop really will help individuals and firms to get way better at how they lead effective change and have positive rather than negative results that come from that. So with that, let me take some of the questions that have come in. And again, I encourage you just chat them in if you've got them. If you were to pick a couple people to send to this program, would you send the people who have demonstrated the most skill at changing culture, or the people who have been more of a boat anchor to change? That's a good question. I got to react. There's a bells and whistles going off in my mind, so I just want to say this. We have found that it's unsuccessful and highly frustrating to have prisoners in a workshop. And if somebody has spent a large part of their career being a boat anchor to change, I'm not so sure the strategy is send them to us and we'll fix them. And so I would be somewhat hesitant. And let me just say this. Everybody that comes to this workshop needs to want to come. They want to come to learn. They want to come to have their mind stretched. They want to come to see things different, do things different, so they can have different results than they've had in the past. So if they've been a boat anchor to change, but they see that and they want to change, they would be welcome and they would love it and they would be stretched, and it could be a good experience. If they're a boat anchor and they don't really want to do it, but you think they could be saved by sending them, I would probably ask you not to do that, because I don't think it's going to help that much. And it's going to be frustrating probably for everybody involved. I'm hoping I'm answering that question, but it's just so important that when people come, they want to come and learn and share. I don't mind coming and challenge them. Hey, we don't have to buy into everything. Come and question things. That's healthy. That's not negative. Question this, question that. That's healthy. But to come and be more than just skeptical, come and dig in your heels and say, well, we've done it this way since 1958. It's always worked. For the most part, this doesn't work. So no prisoners in this. Second question. One issue we found is that there may be a low sense of self-awareness for team members. We view their performance at a certain level and they see it as much higher. What are your recommendations for facilitating self-awareness? I'll give you my thoughts. I'm not sure that ties directly to what we're talking about here with change, but I'm more than happy to just very quickly give you that. Self-awareness is an EQ thing, emotional quotient thing. It's not an IQ thing. I've seen some incredibly intelligent people that have very low self-awareness. The last ones to know why they're frustrating people. And so they're frustrating because people aren't embracing them, inviting them to the table, wanting them into the discussions when they're the smartest person in the room, and they have just such low EQ, people don't like to be around them. So self-awareness is an EQ thing, and part of what we will talk about in the workshop is the importance of EQ in the people side of things. Certainly when you go to find change agents, that section where we talk about how to find and enable and develop change agents, finding people with high EQ is really important. Now, I want to say one thing. You can grow somebody's EQ. It's not like you're set for life. They've got X EQ and that's it. That's not true at all. You can help somebody to improve their EQ and be smarter when it comes to people and how you interact with people and read them and all those things. That can be taught. Some people are born with high EQ and some can develop high EQ and some never will. And probably because they don't want it. They don't use their effort, attitude, and desire to do it. So self-awareness is all EQ related, and we will be addressing that. There's an addition to this, and I should have read that first. In addition to that, these folks could be change agents, but self-awareness can impede this. Absolutely. If you aren't self-aware, you're not going to be an effective change agent. Again, if you don't have a high EQ, you're not going to be an effective change agent. So that will be one of the things that we do address and talk about within this, because absolutely that's one of those things that becomes vitally important for somebody to understand if they're going to, who you're looking for and how you develop them into being an effective change agent is largely EQ. A couple other quick questions. Would it be appropriate to have a firm administrator attend? Absolutely. That list back on whatever slide it was, 10 or whatever, where we gave a list of of who we anticipate coming. That's just some thoughts of who's in leadership roles. If you've got a firm administrator and they're in a leadership role and you expect them to help implement and lead change, yeah, anybody, HR director, whatever, you're looking at COO, it's who's in a leadership seat and they're expected to lead and lead change. That's who would really benefit from. Will there be any prerequisite work required for this workshop? There may be. I mean, again, you do realize it's not until December 5th, 6th, and 7th. And as an example, this morning, Gordon and I were on the phone talking to each other this morning, and he had sent me an article that he wanted me to read, and it was a letter from the CEO of Amazon to shareholders, and it was phenomenal. And Gordon said, this would be perfect. This fits perfect into what we're doing in this workshop, and I couldn't agree more. Those kinds of things we may send out as a prerequisite. Read this before you come. It won't be huge amount. It won't be read a bunch of books before you come. We're not going to do that to somebody. I just turn everybody into liars. Did you all read it? They all nod their head because nobody wants to confess that they did not. We won't do that. But there may be some articles. I could easily see that. This is one that we likely might send out. It's incredible, and it's thinking about the importance of change, and it's kind of a change or die thing. Quick question. What size firms is this being marketed to? This one's everybody within CPAmerica. So this is going to everybody in CPAmerica. All the firms is who this is being marketed to. I hope that's helpful to you. If there's any questions you get, here is my email address. I think you have it anyway, but Sam@Upstream Academy, send me a question. I'll give you a very detailed reply. Thank you so much for participating in this. Best wishes to you. Have a great day. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.